to the final episode of Jurotrip. I'm actually back in New York now, but I have to talk about our trip to Paris. On our way from Venice to France, we flew over the Alps, and that was really cool, just to look out the window and see these amazing snow-capped mountains that are just so close to you that you feel a little shaky about where the plane is flying. I've flown over the Rocky Mountains and things like that in the States before, but this was a bit different. When we finally got to Paris, we checked into our hotel, and we were staying in the 16th arrondissement, which is very close to the Eiffel Tower. So from the rooms we were staying in our hotel, you could actually look out the window and see the tower peeking above the buildings. That was one of those welcome to Paris moments. To me, it was just so cool because it was built in 1889 for the exposition in Paris. It was supposed to be a temporary structure, but in 1900 was the World's Fair there, so they kept it around. The Paris Metro was also something that was built for the 1900 World's Fair, and World's Fairs actually hold a place in my heart because I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where the 1904 World's Fair is an essential part of their history. After going around the Eiffel Tower for a while, trying to just view it from every angle and get a feel for its presence, we made our way down the lawn towards the École Militaire, and they have these trees which I just found so humorous because they're shaped just like the Eiffel Tower, which I can only assume is intentional. Eiffel Tower peeks out, comes back in. I thought it was hilarious. So Elkie and I took the day for ourselves to walk around and see some of the art history things that Paris is so famous for, that we hold so dear. And so we made our way first to the Renoir Museum. The Renoir Museum is housed in this old mansion, a very rustic, beautiful setting for these sculptures. The great thing to me about sculpture as a filmmaker and photographer is that it's a form of art that cannot be captured in 2 dimensions. So when I take photographs or film of the pieces, especially great works of sculpture like those by Renoir, then the possibilities are endless. Whatever photograph or film you take of a sculpture is always going to be different, and it's always going to feel like its own piece of art. So sculpture, to me, is one of these forms of art that can actually breed other forms of art. And then we made our way over to the Musée d'Orsay, which is the museum of 18th and 19th century art. We had a great time there. It was, for Elkie and I, the best part of Paris. A lot of the rooms in the Musée d'Orsay are separated by artist, so you can just walk in, feel the presence of Monet and Manet, Van Gogh and Degas. Whistler's mother is there. The great works of the 18th and 19th century are housed in this museum. That night we went out to a fancy steak restaurant to celebrate my brother Lyle's 31st birthday, and it really felt like the end of the trip. It was a culmination of all of the places we visited and the experiences we've had, and it all just felt wrapped up in that wonderful dinner, our last night in Paris. Afterwards, as a family, we took the metro to come back to the Eiffel Tower to truly witness Paris as the City of Lights. The Eiffel Tower was lit up, and at midnight it begins to sparkle before fading out for the night. And that was truly a sight to behold. The next day we had our plane back to the States, but before that we had just enough time to go to the Louvre. In retrospect, I probably should have spent more time visiting the Judaic sites around Paris, in Le Marais and others. But, you know, everyone always talks about, oh, you have to see the Louvre. You have to see the Louvre. I went to the Louvre, which, frankly, was a disappointment. Yes, you see all of the famous works that they always tout that they have there, like Winged Victory, the Venus de Milo, or Le Joconde, as we know it in this country, Mona Lisa. But the crowds there limit you from being able to appreciate the art. Standing 20 feet away from the Mona Lisa, which is behind bulletproof glass, and you're roped off, and there's these huge crowds all battling each other to get up just to be able to see it. I saw it, and frankly, I wasn't impressed. I've seen other Da Vinci works that are much more impressive, and if someone would like to explain to me why the Mona Lisa is revered as the greatest work of all art history in terms of painting, please inform me, because I turned around and there were better paintings directly behind me that people were completely ignoring just because it's the Mona Lisa. Ooh. We visited some of the other parts of the museum, the Egyptian art galleries, the Islamic galleries, and the Near Eastern gallery, which has the Code of Hammurabi housed in it. And although I felt really bad about not visiting Le Marais and the synagogues and Jewish museums and all of that in Paris, because there's a rich history there, I did make a discovery in the Louvre which really surprised me, and I thought was really amazing, that amongst all of these other pieces of history and art, that they had works that were from Moab, that were from Nineveh, the town that Jonah famously went to go save after being released from the belly of the giant fish, and from Nimrod, these places that are mentioned in the Torah. And so to see the artifacts from all these different places made me feel like history just goes so far back, and our lives are just a small sliver of that. But our culture extends all the way back through that history. Jews have only been living in the United States for a few hundred years, and in Europe for a few thousand years, which is what I've been exploring these last few weeks. But I think something that becomes all too common is that we accept what we're told as a society is important. That, oh, you have to see this, and you have to experience this, and that this is what's important. But to me, at the core of it all, is that family is important. Spirituality is important. Discovery is important. I want to keep making these Jurotrip videos. I want to keep exploring all these different places throughout the world and tell their stories and to investigate their history and to bring that out to an open audience. Imagine if there was an archive of all of these stories and what life was like in Corfu, Greece, and Dubrovnik, Croatia, or any corner of the world where Jews have lived, and to have that for future generations. I can only hope that this is the first step towards making that a reality. One day when we were out at sea, I was up on deck and just watching the water go by. There was no land for as far as the eye could see, but there was a bird that was flying alongside the ship. I didn't know where it was coming from or where it was headed, but it just kept going. That's an image that's going to stick in my head for the rest of my life.